Hi, I'm Dawn Damari, and this is another episode of the Teaspoon of Healing audio blog. Today I'm going to talk about Veterans Day, honoring our veterans, and about my grandfather who served in World War II. On Veterans Day here in the United States, we honor people who served in the military, although I may disagree with a lot of policies, like, for example, earlier this century, the war in Iraq. I was in pretty strong disagreement with that. I never have had anything but the utmost respect for people who choose to serve in the military. It is not their choice to go to war. They don't make these policies. They choose, based on their convictions, to serve the country in what they think is right. And I think that's really honorable. And in the distant past, of course, they were conscripted, and I still very much honor them. It's a very honorable thing to do, and so many have sacrificed so much, including their lives, for our country. And I really wish we treated our veterans better. I know that they get free health care with the VA, and they get psychological care and other things, but whenever I hear about homeless veterans, I just get really disgusted. It really breaks my heart. We really need to do a lot more for these people, and there is no excuse for any of them to be on the streets or suffering from untreated PTSD or any other care. So I'm going to get off my soapbox, and I'm going to talk about my grandfather. His name was Richard Morris. He was my mom's dad, and he fought in World War II. He was also a very creative person. He was a writer, and he always took a strong stand against corruption and hypocrisy. He is also a descendant, and I guess I am too, of one of the original signers of the Declaration of Independence, whose name was Lewis Morris. Now, my grandfather entered the war, this was World War II, in North Africa as a part of General Patton's army, and this army proceeded to invade Italy through Sicily. And unfortunately, he was captured by the Nazis and became a prisoner of war. And he was on a train headed toward a prison camp for Allied troops in Germany, but he escaped. He jumped off that train and ended up in Tuscany. He escaped to a village in a place called Val d'Orcia, which is an area in Tuscany near Siena, which is very agricultural. It has a lot of farms. So he lived off the land there, and he was helped by an American woman who eventually became a countess of Italy because she married an Italian count. So he got a lot of help from them. And he wrote a book about his experience, which my mom and I were going to eventually get into an electronic version and edit because it really needs to be published. When the war ended, he made it home, of course, and he was celebrated as a decorated war hero. But the next part of his story is really interesting. It has a twist. Now, it was very fashionable at that time among artists, actors, and other creative people to join the Communist Party in America. And he did so for a brief time. He lived on the East Coast, and unfortunately, that was during the McCarthy era and the Red Scare. And so he was dishonored by the government. He had all his medals stripped from him, and an FBI file was actually created under his name. And when I learned about this when I was a teenager, of course, many decades after, because obviously I wasn't alive during that time, it really bothered me because it showed me how quickly the system will devalue and discard you, no matter how many wonderful and honorable things you've done, just because you have a view or a strong conviction that's against the establishment. Now, I don't know how long he remained in the Communist Party. I don't think it was very long. He just ended up espousing pretty anti-establishment views. So the U.S. government eventually apologized to him and returned his medals a couple of decades later. And as long as he was alive, I admired his bravery, his courage, and his opposition to corruption and hypocrisy. And at his funeral, several relatives mentioned that, how hypocrisy really bothered him. He also had a really vibrant spirit, and I remember him dancing. I remember him just traveling a lot, meeting people. Even as an elderly man, he was always making new friends. And this Veterans Day, I honor him as well as all others who have served in the military. These people deserve a lot more support, love, and respect. And I miss you, Grandpa Morris.